The hottest local news, trending international stories, weekly review, topics that affect our communities, in-depth analyses and opinions. All that you need is in one place. Weekly Review. Sunday night at 9 on ViuTVSix.
Welcome back. As drama over a 43-year-old mother who received 2 urgent liver transplants continues to unfold, doctors at the United Christian Hospital were accused of failing to inform Queen Mary Hospital about a serious medical blunder despite knowing about it. The patient's doctor at Queen Mary said the error only came to light when he was examining her medical records after she was transferred from Kwun Tong Hospital. He said doctors failed to prescribe hepatitis B medication to her. That allowed a virus to develop, leading to liver failure. The hospital authority hasn't shared any further details about who's responsible, but said the mechanism for hospitals to report errors should be reviewed.
I'm not saying that there's a systemic problem here. But since there's a concern, and also we'd like to see whether there is really we are actually implementing the thing that frontline really clear about it, or any delay. This time there's a delay. So I think it's appropriate time for us to have a set up a panel to review.
Ex-Chief Secretary Raphael Hui and former Sanongate Properties Joint Chairman Thomas Kwok appeared in court for the second day of their hearing for a final appeal against their corruption convictions. Hui was taken to the Court of Final Appeal in Central from Stanley Prison, where he's serving a 7.5-year term. Kwok, who's out on bail, was accompanied by his son. Government prosecutor David Perry rejected the defence's claim on Tuesday that there was no actual instance of misconduct related to Hui. He said he'd constantly betrayed the public and lost his integrity as a top official by putting himself at the Kwok's disposal after accepting millions of dollars from the tycoon's family. Now, a man's been arrested for allegedly raping and robbing a young woman early hours on Sunday. The 48-year-old suspect was taken away in handcuffs. Police combed through his house and found what's believed to be the victim's phone and the clothes the man wore on the day of the attack. Authorities say the 22-year-old victim was walking along a bridge near Kowloon Bay MTR station when she was attacked by the suspect. She tried to run away before he caught up with her under the bridge. In wrapping up his Macau visit, State Leader Jiang Dejiang met with people from the city's education sector. During the seminar, Jiang said education is of great importance if Macau wants to produce young talent with integrity. He also warned educators to make sure students stay on the right track.
If you don't want students to drift away, schools must have a better understanding of the ideologies in society so educators can create harmony between the different forces. Teachers should also teach students to analyze objectively and allow them to have a better understanding of the country.
US President Donald Trump has given the green light to Kurdish fighters with weapons to retake the Syrian city of Raqqa from Islamic State. This despite fierce opposition from NATO ally Turkey. Ryan Brooks reports.
President Trump brushing past fierce opposition from NATO ally Turkey on Thursday evening, approving the supply of arms to Kurdish forces in Syria as they fight to take back control in the Islamic State's stronghold of Raqqa. Washington says it'll supply weapons to Kurdish members of a wider U.S.-backed coalition, but Turkey sees those Kurds as terrorists. In fact, last month they carried out airstrikes on them, killing around 30 fighters. Turkey hasn't publicly responded to Trump's decision yet, but the Pentagon has stressed that arming the Kurdish forces is, quote, necessary to ensure a clear victory in Raqqa. The city is Islamic State's de facto capital in Syria and has become a hub for planning the group's attacks in the West. Turkish support has been critical to the battle against ISIS, but the significance of the fight for Raqqa seems to have pushed the U.S. to look beyond that, something that will no doubt cast a shadow over Washington when Turkish President Erdogan visits next week.
Now, in a meeting that's bound to draw condemnation from Beijing, U.S. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi and a bipartisan congressional delegation to India met with exiled Tibetan leader the Dalai Lama. The visit comes at a delicate time for U.S. President Donald Trump, who's seeking China's support to restrain nuclear-armed North Korea.
So I welcome you.
A reminder to Trump on Tibet. US President Donald Trump is playing down human rights as a foreign policy issue. He wants China's help in containing the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. But a group of US lawmakers led by House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi takes a different view. They want to draw the world's attention to the situation in Chinese-ruled Tibet, and they have come to pay a visit to Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, at his exiled headquarters in India. I'm Doug Busvine reporting for Reuters from Dharamshala, India. Well, this Himalayan hill town has for decades been the headquarters of the Dalai Lama. And the 81-year-old Nobel Peace Laureate is revered around the world for his spiritual and moral leadership, but he is reviled in China, which has sought to internationally isolate him. Well, under previous presidents, the Dalai Lama could always count on an invitation from the White House. That is unlikely to happen now that Trump is in office. But US lawmakers want to maintain their engagement and keep up their support for the human rights cause in Tibet. Pelosi rededicated her commitment to the people, faith and culture of Tibet, and in a public show of support, held hands with the Dalai Lama during their lengthy meeting at his single-story residence here in Dharamshala. But since she last visited him in 2008, the human rights situation in Tibet has deteriorated. This visit, while important, may not be enough to stem the growing international isolation of the Dalai Lama and his followers. And that, in turn, could undermine their ability to name a successor to the elderly monk when the time comes. China, for its part, wants to name the 15th Dalai Lama itself. There's precious little room for compromise, especially at a time when the US has more pressing concerns elsewhere.
Hundreds of people gathered in Jakarta to show support for the Indonesian capital's governor a day after he was sentenced to 2 years in jail for blasphemy. The rally at the City Hall is a show of solidarity with Basuki Cahayapurnama, known as Ahok, whose harsher-than-expected sentencing has triggered shockwaves in the country. The trial surrounded remarks made by Ahok late last year when he reportedly accused Jakarta's imams of misusing verses from the Quran to discriminate against Christians. His comments prompted protests throughout Muslim-majority Indonesia. Democracy groups see yesterday's sentencing as a setback for freedom of speech and fear that the country's secularism is at risk. Something a little bit different now. Feeling unwell? No need to phone the local surgery and make an appointment. A virtual specialist will see you now.
Hi, I'm cardiac electrophysiologist Dr. Leslie Saxon, your personal 24/7 atrial fibrillation expert. I'm here to answer your questions. How can I help you?
How does this work?
The digital diagnosis could be the future of medical care, as demonstrated by this app, currently being developed at the University of Southern California. The app is called Doc On, and real doctors were scanned to create avatars that patients can question instead of having to search for information online. You describe your symptoms, and your digital doctor in the always open app surgery can give you what's being called health information.
We think that the majority of healthcare delivery in the future is going to be over a digital platform versus a bricks and mortar building. So we imagine that in a few years, 80% of care that's now being done in a bricks and mortar building with a point visit, us being in the same room together for that entirety of your healthcare visit with me and experience with me,